What's up, Divas Unleashed Nation? I'm Gary Cook, and this is another episode of Divas Dive. And today, we have a three-parter coming for you. We're doing a mock draft of the entire WWE women's roster, and saying how we would draft the ladies around to make the best shows possible for weekly television. In part 1, we're going to do WWE Raw. In part 2, we'll be doing WWE SmackDown. And in part 3, we'll be talking about who will be the centerpieces of NXT to replace a lot of the call-ups that I made in the previous two videos to balance out the rosters. Without any more to do, let's jump in and mock draft WWE Raw. So, with this, couple ground rules. The goal is to balance SmackDown and Raw so both the rosters have a decent amount of talent on them. Each brand should have a strong upper, mid, and lower tier on their card. So that way there is a clear ladder that the women can climb to earn their promotions, title shots, etc. Each brand also needs to have a good number of tag teams so that the tag team belts can be developed alongside the singles belts. How this worked out was each brand ended up with 5 tag teams that I feel are decently balanced between the two shows to allow for growth and a good pool of talent for the Iconics to face off against in future title matches. So, we will start with Raw, as we said earlier, and see about making this show worth watching, because the Raw women's roster has been utterly destroyed by the year of Ronda, where they fed everybody to her and left everybody looking awful. So there's a lot of fixing to do here. Thanks, Ronda. Please don't come back. So we're going to also let you know now, there are some assumptions made about Money in the Bank and the next NXT TakeOver for why some of the women are where they are. I wanted to focus more on what I feel like will be the long-term success of the brands versus looking at the short-term that's going on right now. I feel like Becky will not be holding both belts for a good chunk of the year. I feel like one's going to get dropped relatively quickly, most likely Money in the Bank. So that is where some of the assumptions are made and why Becky will only show up on one list. And speaking of Becky, introducing your Raw Women's Champion, Becky Lynch. I don't see any way that she's ending up on SmackDown because Vince likes to keep the people that make him the most money on Raw. He tends to look at SmackDown as the B show, and he tends to invest all his time and energy into Raw, which is usually a bad thing because he has no clue what he's doing anymore, and Raw is awful. But with Becky as champ, that's a bright spot. And I feel like Becky will definitely be the Raw Women's Champion coming out of Money in the Bank as her solo title. Then, in order for her solo title to mean anything, she needs an upper card. A talented group that will allow for good interactions between themselves to earn shots at the title, but also be worthy of being in the ring with Becky. Spoiler alert, Lacey Evans isn't on the list. First up, Alexa Bliss. She's a former Raw Women's Champion. She is the only woman on the current Raw roster that was not destroyed by the year of Ronda. So I feel like that puts her in a good spot to move back into the upper card. She has a good following. She's good on the mic. She can cut good promos. And she's been getting better in the ring. And I feel like they're pushing her back towards the top rung after this week's Raw, where she had her match that destroyed Bayley. So I feel like Bliss is a good choice to go into the upper card and to provide a good heel alternative for Becky. She's also a bit different than Charlotte in that she is a blonde, but she's not a technically wrestling blonde. She's more of just the princessy, deserves what she gets, cheats to win type So I feel like it would at least be a different story than the Charlotte story we just finished up and have had so many times. Next up, Shayna Baszler. I feel like she's added things to do in NXT. I think her title run that she's currently on is just being kept in order to build her up a great face challenger to dethrone her. I don't feel like they feel confidence in any of the women they have there, or that the women that they currently have at the top are going to be around long enough to make putting the belt on them worthwhile. So I feel like Shayna is going to be playing some double duty here, but Shayna also has a good reason to come over to Raw and go after Becky, in that she is part of the 4 horsewomen from the MMA world, and poor old Ronnie is going to need somebody to avenge her. And if Shayna can pick up speed, she can replace Ronda and show everybody why Ronda was completely awful at everything she did. And Shayna is basically Ronda with talent. So I see no reason why she should not be slid right into that Ronda role on the Raw card to chase Becky. Third, Ruby Riott. Ruby Riott is amazing in the ring, and probably the one who has been hurt the most by the year of Ronda. Her and the Riott Squad as a whole have been completely buried, but she's so good in the ring. It's very upsetting. I feel like she isn't so far gone, though, that she can't be rehabilitated, and I feel like the fans know that she has gotten a bum deal when it comes to how she's been presented and what she's had to do for Ronda. So I think she could definitely be in that upper card area, and I think a feud with the next woman on this list would do wonders to propel Ruby back into the spot that she should be amongst the women. And that is Asuka. She has to get off SmackDown. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. She has been humiliated, disgraced, and just utterly destroyed on that brand for Charlotte and Ronda. She's probably after Ruby, or even maybe above Ruby, one of the women who have suffered the most from the year of Ronda and everything being done to support Ronda and trying to make every match Ronda's in feel special, even though none of them ever did. But I feel like a move to Raw will give her a fresh start and a way to reintroduce herself and get back into the game and back up on the pedestal that a woman of her talent deserves to be on. Then rounding it out, rumors are coming out that Beth Phoenix is going to be sticking around a bit longer. So I feel like Raw makes the most sense for her, especially when you see some of the other picks I make later on in this video would set her up for a lot of feuds that she currently has lingering and give her a spot to really shine. And I feel like she's going to be an upper card talent just because she is a Hall of Famer and she is so good in the ring and looks so good in the ring at WrestleMania that I don't see a reason that they would use her in anything but some high profile stuff. Then of course Natalya would round out the upper card. She's a former champion herself. She's great in the ring. She's got the Hart legacy. Her promos need some work, but if she's with Beth, that kind of can get covered up some. And I see Natalie very much as kind of that upper tier gatekeeper, a good person for women to feud with that are coming out of the mid card, looking for that rub and bump into the upper tier talent that Natalya, with a little bit of rehabilitation on her win-loss record, could definitely provide for the WWE Women's Division on Raw. I see her as a great gatekeeper for that upper echelon that she belongs to be listed among. So after the upper card, you need to have some mid-card talent. Some people that are good, but not great yet, but can have some interesting stories and interesting feuds to help build them up, and then eventually hopefully push them into that mid-card area. First on my list for that is Bayley. Now, as far as wrestling matches go, Bayley can easily be upper card. She's great in the ring, yes, I know. But her promo skills are very, 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 very subpar when she shows up on Raw or SmackDown. She does great in NXT. She does great at small shows. She does great at house shows. She does pretty good at backstage interviews, but when you put her in front of a very large crowd, she does awful. She is not good at all on the mic on that big stage. I feel like she's a big enough draw still, though, that she should still be on one of the main two shows with the fan base that she does have, but I don't think she's cut out to be upper level talent with those 6 women we just went over. I feel like she is a step below them, and I feel like pushing her down to the mid card will give her the breathing room she needs to work on those mic skills and maybe elevate her entire persona to a level that belongs in the upper card setting that they keep pushing her into, and she keeps kind of floundering in because she's not built for that yet. So I feel like she would definitely be the top end of the mid card and a strong person that could easily bounce between both, but wouldn't be a mainstay in the upper card until she made some improvements to her overall game. Lacey Evans, I feel like, is going to end up in the mid card. Her matches have gotten better when it comes to house shows and wrestling on main event. She has a pretty good handle on her gimmick. She's got a good heel persona going, and the company is very much behind her. I don't see them letting her wallow in the lower end of the card talent. And with the reports of how high Vince is on her, I feel like she definitely is going to be one of those ones that kind of floats between mid and upper card at the start of her career. But I feel like she needs to start solidly in the mid card because they've hurt Lacey's character so much with her horrible just walking down the ramp, walking up the ramp, walking down the ramp, walking up the ramp that we've endured for like 4 months now. So because of that, nobody buys her as a serious challenger to anybody on the roster because she hasn't done anything. And I think putting her in the program with Becky off the bat is a mistake. I hope they kind of just wind that down as a one-off and then let her develop in the mid-card before thrusting her in the limelight that I don't think she's fully ready for yet. So I think she's a strong addition to the Raw mid-card. Mickie James. She's another floater, but I feel like she will stay largely in the mid-card just because I don't think she's getting a title run anytime soon, but I don't think she's enhancement talent either. There's a lot they could do with her, but it would take a lot of rebuilding because they haven't done anything with her. She hasn't really been on TV much. We haven't seen her do much. She had a very good showing at the Battle Royale at WrestleMania, but that's about it. I would love to see them do more with her, and I feel like if they established a strong middle card for the women, that would be a place where Mickie could thrive, rebuild herself in the eyes of a lot of the newer fans, and then float her way up into some programs with the upper card talents and maybe even make a few runs at the belt in the future. But right now, I feel like the rebuilding process has her a bit outside of that upper tier, but not too far outside of it. Then this one might be a bit of a controversial pick. Jessamyn Duke. I feel like when Shayna Baszler comes, the other 2 horsewomen are going to come with her. I don't feel like there's anything they can really do for them in NXT because they've been coupled so heavily with Shayna that it's going to be hard to decouple them, I think, in the eyes of the fans. And they're kind of just relegated to lackeys right now on NXT, and I don't see them being able to get past that, even if Shayna moved up and they stayed behind, unless there was a large shift in the gimmicks that they were given. But I think keeping the 4 horsemen intact is probably the best idea. Excuse me. And giving Shayna her lackeys to still work with on the main roster will only help in her stories. And I think having somebody at the mid-card level would be a good spot to kind of help propel Shayna's stories with something that they could still take seriously in her side. And I feel like Jessamyn has shown the most talent out of the other 2 women in that stable, and that given enough time, she could develop into a really good singles wrestler on her own. I don't know if she'll push into that upper tier ever, but I think being on the main roster is only going to help her, where having more house shows that she can go work, having like the main events and shows like that she can go and do, will allow her to develop as a single star much more than being on NXT is going to allow her, where it doesn't really make sense right now for her to be doing much. So I think she would get the push with her and end up here to help balance out this mid-card with some young talent that can trade wins and losses pretty easily and not be hurt by it with these other women. that are in the mid tier. Rounding out the mid tier, I have Naomi. She's another one that has just been destroyed by creative over on SmackDown, so I think she definitely needs a fresh start somewhere. I don't think her in-ring talent is up to par with the other 6 women in the upper card. I think she still has a lot of room to grow, and I have her over here not to be pushing for a singles belt, but a tag belt situation that I will show you guys in a bit here when we get to the tag teams. But I feel like the fresh start on Raw is going to be great for her and give her a chance to kind of reestablish herself and be a strong person in that kind of mid-card game on the single side, and a much more of a force on the tag team side that we'll talk about here a bit later. Then Vanessa Bourne, this one is another odd choice, I know. I feel like she's going to float between the lower and the mid-card when she comes up. She has been in NXT for a while. I don't see much else for her to do there. She's not really in the NXT title picture, and I don't see her becoming part of that picture. She seems to be floating towards more of a tag team role, which is why she's over here. And I feel like she is the stronger of the 2 women in that tag team. But she's not upper card level as a singles competitor, but she's also not completely useless in the ring, which is why I feel like she could be that lower echelon of the mid card that would kind of float between lower card to get some wins, mid card get some losses, so she can get some experience and practice in. Another one like Jessamine that I feel like would really benefit from the increased work schedule of having the house shows and things like that to really hone her craft and get better at it. So that brings us to the lower card talents. I'm very aware some of these choices people are going to hate. Have a blast in the comments. Tell me why I'm wrong. I'd love to hear it. I might respond to some of them if you make some good arguments. Remember, these are just my opinions. I'd love to hear your opinions. So starting off the lower card, I would move over Vega. Zelina is very good in the ring. She is. This is not a knock on her talent. It's more of just she's been booked as a manager for so long. I don't think people would take her as a credible in-ring threat at this point. And I feel like she has a lot of rebuilding to do. And I think that she has to work her way back up to be seen as more than just the valet that she's been presented as over the past few months. So she's down here to reestablish herself, to get a footing, and to really prove that she still has it in the ring after kind of being regulated to just a manager for Andrade, as pretty much all she's done lately. She hasn't, I can't think of the last match she had on the main roster outside of like the Battle Royals. So she really needs to get that footing in and start rebuilding the fan base that she had when it comes to singles competition, because outside of her diehard fans, I don't think anybody would really see her as a credible competitor at this point. So she's got a long way to go climbing up the card. Next is Nia Jax. If I had a 4th list that was people that belong in the Performance Center, Nia Jax would be on that list. It's no secret, I'm not a fan of hers. I don't think she belongs in the title picture. I don't think she belongs in the main roster. I don't even think she belongs on NXT. She is boring to watch. She's bland to listen to. She's a complete waste of a roster space. But she's The Rock's cousin, so there's no way they're not going to put her on TV. But at best, she should be enhancement talent used to put other girls over on their way up and down the card, because they have no other use for Nia. I have no other use for Nia, and that's why she's here. Bianca Belair is another odd choice. I don't think she's fully ready for the main roster, but I don't think keeping her NXT is going to help her at this point. She's had 3 runs at the belt now, lost all 3 times. I don't see a 4th run making much sense or doing her much good, because I don't see them dropping the belt off Shayna to her. And I don't feel like there's anything else really for her to do in NXT at this point. So I feel like she needs to come up to the main roster. She's not going to get a ton of TV time on Raw. I feel like she's largely up here as an enhancement talent to start out with, to kind of get some more matches in on the house show circuit, on the main event shows, on pre-shows, things like that. But I feel like that's going to do her more good than just staying stagnant on NXT, where there's not really a good fit for her, I see, moving forwards after after the WrestleMania takeover, they pretty much wrote Bianca Belair into a corner that I don't see many interesting ways out of for them. So I feel like she just needs to get moved up and make sporadic TV appearances, but largely just benefit from what they could do on the house shows to really help her get over some of the green that still shows off in her matches. As I feel like she has the talent, she has the personality. It just needs to get refined, and I think that refinement isn't going to happen in NXT anymore. I think it needs to happen on the main roster, and then when she does kind of hit that point of being ready, she'll be ready to skyrocket, and she'd be somebody they could quickly propel up the ladder. If they built up their lower mid cards and upper cards correctly, they'd have a path to really put her in a few stories that would get her up into title contentions or that upper mid card area to be a competitive force on the main roster. Marina Shriver, she's going to come with the other ones. I feel like I've seen the least of her, so I don't have as much confidence in her. I feel like we've seen more from Jessamine than we have her. But I do have plans for Marina on the main roster here. It's not in singles competition. It's in tag. I'm pretty sure you can all figure out what I'm thinking about there. But I feel like much like Bianca and Jessamine, there's not much left for her in NXT. It's going to be hard to decouple her from the Shayna War Machine unless they move her into the Undisputed Era, which has had a rumor of picking up a female member. She's the most logical choice, being Roderick Strong's IRL wife. So I could see her going there, in which case I would be fine with seeing her stay in NXT. But if they're going to keep her as part of the 4 Horsewomen and just be the only one not called up, I don't see that helping her. I see that hurting her. So I feel like she needs to come up with the rest of the group and get her teeth cut here. There'd be a lot more chances for her, same as with Jessamine, to get some singles matches, to get more work in on the main roster with the increased amount of shows she'd be working than there are in NXT. So I feel like that, much like Bianca, she'd be a good one to get polished off on the pre-shows, on the house shows, on main events, and from occasional appearances on Raw or SmackDown to help build her up some and get her to a better place. Rounding out the bottom of the lower card talent on Raw is Carmella. I feel like in ring ability, she's just so much behind a lot of the current generation. Gimmick-wise, she's highly entertaining. Getting crowds to pop, she's very good at that. She has the entertainment value, so there's definitely value in Carmella. I just don't think that value comes as a singles competitor. I think her win at the Battle Royal was a mistake. I think it only hurt the women's division and didn't help anybody on it. I think her days as a single champion are over. But she is also here for the tag team division on this draft and not for what she brings to the talent of the singles division. She's just here to enhance that and be used as somebody that when she is facing off one-on-one can put on a good match, can put some name power behind it, but doesn't really need to win because that's not where her value lies anymore. And then Alea is here for the same reason. Is she is over. She's got a good fan base. She's got a good look. She's got a good gimmick. She's just so boring in the ring when she's by herself. She is very much the Marty Jannetty of a tag team. Is without that Shawn Michaels type persona with her, she doesn't really go anywhere. And Vanessa Bourne has very much been that Shawn Michaels for her in NXT and has propelled her to be much more interesting on that show. And I feel like she needs to keep with that arrangement if she wants to make it past NXT. And I feel like with pulling Vanessa Bourne up, Alea comes with her. Also then, spoiler alert, bringing another tag team to the main roster for Raw to focus on. And then the last one in the lower card is Tamina. She's well past her prime. She's been here for 10 or 11 years. She hasn't improved. She hasn't gotten worse, but she hasn't gotten better. She's remained stagnant. And that stagnant has been no personality, no gimmick, no nothing. I don't see a use for her. She's only here because of her last name, I think, for the most part. And they keep just kind of riding on the Snuka name. And even the value of that, I would question, given her father's past and what came out after his death. as far as assumptions and things go. So I feel like she's just here because she has legacy value, but she hasn't really added anything in a long time to any of the shows she's been on. So even if she was to suddenly drastically improve, I think there's a lot of rebuilding that would have to be done before she would even be considered a top tier talent in the eyes of the WWE universe again. So that brings us to our tag teams. Now there's 5 of them. Some of them are going to take a bit more building, but I tried to keep it as balanced as I could between the 2 shows. And I feel like there's enough space on a 3-hour Raw to build some of these tag teams up and make them something special. Divas of Doom would definitely be your top tag team on Raw just because of the experience. I feel like they would be a good veteran team to really help some of these younger teams that we're going to talk about get over. I feel like they could add a lot in just the learning curve for them and also add some legitimacy to the roster of tag team competition, as both their names do hold weight and do bring value to the show. The Samoan Slaughterhouse, I mean, yay, they're useless. They're there to eat pinfalls and look dangerous and beat up on some of some people at times to keep their edgy monster tough girl persona going, but I don't see them going anywhere. I don't see them ever having a title run. They are your tag team enhancement talent for the Raw brand. Team Glow, I really like them at Elimination Chamber. Not that we got to see a lot of them wrestle together in the match, but as far as personalities go, cohesiveness of look, the entrance, it all fit really well together, and I feel like they could definitely be a top tier tag team in the women's division if they committed to the role and ran with it. And I feel like it would be a good way for them both to escape the singles division where they're just outshadowed, outshined, and stay in the shadows of so much young talent that is so superior to them in the ring, that I feel like this would be a good spot for them to really shine and be able to grow and progress within the main roster of the company without either A, having to do like Carmella did at the Battle Royal and squander what could have been a good opportunity for younger talents, or B, like Naomi, just get lost in the shuffle because you're not the best in the ring and not the worst. We're top tier when the competition level was much lower, and trying to find your way back in there. I feel like this would be a good way for her to find her way back in. Then the Horsewomen of Jessamine Duke and Marina Shriver, I feel like would make for a good tag team. And I could definitely see a situation where those two eventually had tag team gold, Shayna had singles gold, and they got to be the dominant faction within the women's division that everybody else was chasing. So I definitely can see a future for them as a tag team, and I see the two of them actually working much better as a tag team if they're keeping the Horsewomen together. I think there's definitely more chance for success for them there than as a singles run goes, because then they're all going to be competing with each other at some point, and you have the problem of an NXT now where Shayna's the top dog, so what do you do with the two under her? There's nothing for them really to chase. There's no motivation for them to chase. At least this way it would separate them from Shayna and give them a belt of their own to chase, and I feel like that would be a good thing for the Horsewomen as a whole. Then the last team, Born and Alea, I feel like they're definitely green. They definitely have a lot to improve on, but they have a great look together. They have good chemistry together, and it would be a young tag team that could take a few losses for the other teams, pick up a few wins from the other teams, and be taken seriously, and definitely be built up into something special. I feel like that is the best path for sure for Alea. I feel like Vanessa Bourne definitely needs some polishing on the single side, so keeping her in the tag would allow her to definitely be a bit more in the spotlight than she currently would be without that. And I feel like the tag teams is a great way to bring up some of these stars that are not quite ready for the full-on singles action, but aren't really able to develop anymore in NXT, as a way to start getting them exposed to the greater public, seeing what they can do and seeing where they go. So that wraps up our Raw picks for the draft. Let us know in the comments below what you think, what you liked, what you didn't like, your cries of outrage. I am open to hearing all of it. I'm excited to hear all of it. Let me know your opinions on who should go where as my cat attacks. But I think it's gonna be interesting to see the shakeup. I feel like this makes Raw a much more balanced and cohesive show, which is something it really needs to be. Cat, stop attacking the microphone. So with that said, let me take care of the cat here. Remember to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and stay tuned to Divas Unleashed for all your women's wrestling news, thoughts, and opinions. I'm Gary Cook, and I look forward to talking to you all in the comments and on social media about what you want to see happen in the Superstar Shakeup.